I've been in the visitor center at Yunque, and I've been looking at that book about the birds here. And then I found one thing. You see, banana-quit birds and spindles, they're extremely alike. The only way that you can tell the difference is by genetic and DNA information, and also that the spindle will have two white stripes and the banana-quit will have one. But then I read for the banana-quit endemic subspecies. And I was like, what? There's something smaller than species? I thought that was the most specific. And yes, there is such thing as subspecies. I know, right? It's complicated. Scientists are just really weird. Why do you even need to make a subspecies? We've already got species. That's enough. You could just make them different species. So basically, as the name can tell, it's basically really self-explanatory. It is a species that is another species, but yet is not that species. That's just what a subspecies is. But then I started coming into a few other things and a bunch of other animals that are subspecies for some reason. I don't get that. For example, a subspecies can be created. For example, if a lynx and a house cat marry each other and mate, and they give birth to a lat. And then if somebody else gives birth to a lat, then these two, if they are the opposite gender, then they can mate and create a whole new species. That is one way that they could create it. And all the other ones, Google, this is blank. Oh, yeah. Scientists don't know. That's why Google can't pick it up. So, yeah. But still, how exactly does a subspecies even survive? And does subspecies count as invasive? Link in the end of the video. But anyways, now let's go back to the example of the spindles and the banana-quits. You see, the banana-quits are extremely identical to the spindle. I mean, you can see that they're both are slightly yellow, slightly gray. Both of them, they have a bit of white on them. But still, you can kind of see the difference. And then you see another difference, which you need like a microscope to look at because DNA. But anyways, now if you look at the DNA, their DNA is the exact same. There's only like one strand of DNA that's different. Literally. Take all the DNA in a banana-quit, put it together, take a spindle DNA, put it together, and examine it. And only in 5 years will you find the difference, because the only difference is a single strand. And that's really what a subspecies is. Now, one way that I really like to put it is the same as a species, yet it is not the same species. That's the best, simplest, yet most complicated way to put it. But here, let's get a bit deeper, and soon it will become much more simple. You know how earlier I said that it might be able to be created by, for example, a lynx and a house cat mating each other and giving birth to it, and then another one does the same thing, and boom, new entire species. But there is something else that can create subspecies: evolution. Now, most of the time, evolution creates separate species. But still, on rare occasions, nature decides to be like, how about let's just change 0.1% of the DNA? And that's really just what it is. Nature just changing 0.1% of the animal's genetic information and DNA to be identical yet not identical to another species. And that is what defines subspecies. Just like in the name, it's self-explanatory. It is a species that had been split in two. But it is still the same species, just not that connected. And really, when I started looking this up, in my mind I was going like, what? And then I started looking up how many known subspecies there are. And then I came across breeding subspecies and non-breeding subspecies. So I was like, what the heck? What does this even mean? So I went into what breeding even means because I don't exactly know anyways. Now, I found out that breeding subspecies are just like the bananaquits. They can mate with each other. But what if, for example, a liger came and tried to mate with a tiger? That isn't really going to work. But the liger, it can also not reproduce with another female liger. And that is what a non-breeding subspecies is. It's still a subspecies, but it's not breeding. Hold up. Let me look up my dictionary. What? Species means that an identical creature that can reproduce and create babies. Okay, this is not helpful at all. My brain is going insane right now. Subspecies is a species, but some subspecies cannot reproduce. Does that make it a species or a not species? I mean, like, you can't always trust a dictionary because it's just one person writing it. Nobody even knows what it really means. And if you look at the dictionary, and then you look at what a subspecies is, a non-breeding subspecies, you'd be like, okay, then I'll call this a sub-not species. But hold on. Some of these, sometimes, and even for scientists, they call subspecies like ligers a non-breeding species? Okay, this is not helpful. I mean, like, you scientists, you're the guys who said that species means identical creatures that reproduce. And now you're saying that these creatures who are not identical and also cannot reproduce are species? Wow. This is all getting really complicated. Science, that's just what it is. It's basically trying to read the Bible in its original scripture in Hebrew, which would be impossible because barely any of us know how to read Hebrew, and also it's kind of lost to history. We only have the copies. Anyways, now let's take a look at what a real species is. And let's see if we can compare a subspecies to a species, and that might give us an answer. Now, okay, let's take a look at species. The dictionary says what I already told you. They are identical and can reproduce. And now let's get even more deeper. So, let's just load up Wikipedia and type in species. Okay? Okay, let's just find an article on what species is. Okay, found it. So, this article, which does not even exist, besides the Wikipedia article that isn't even finished. But anyways, in this one, species is a identical or non-identical creature that can reproduce or not reproduce. Okay, this is getting better, but it's still pretty blunt. Okay, now subspecies article. Okay, so here it says a identical species that can reproduce or sometimes not reproduce. That's not what I'm finding in a dictionary, Wikipedia, or any official site, guys. Okay, let's get in. Let's make it a tiny bit more blunt. Okay, let's make it blunt. So, a subspecies would be something that might be able to breed, but sometimes cannot. And a species can breed no matter what. If it can't breed, then it is a subspecies. But this is a bit too blunt. Let's just zoom it in a little and split subspecies in half. No, not sub and species, not that. Let's split it in half. Metaphorically split it in half. Okay, let's see. So we're going to be splitting subspecies into breeding subspecies and non-breeding subspecies because this can clear a lot of the things. So now, if we take a banana quit, then we can just shove it into breeding because it can breed. And then, if you look at the non-breeding subspecies, then one famous example would be something that I brought up already, a jackalope. No, jackalopes don't exist, I'm sorry, but liger, it's a mixture of a lion and a tiger. If you don't know, that's why they're called ligers. And ligers cannot reproduce, that's why they go into the non-breeding section. And over here, it's getting pretty blunt, and I'm sure that you can understand the meaning. Subspecies, the word subspecies is too blunt. You need to split it in half, not literally, and turn it into breeding and non-breeding. Breeding ones can breed and reproduce, but non-breeding cannot breed and therefore cannot reproduce. Species is in a whole other story that needs to go down into a deeper level of complexity, okay? Don't expect that I can do an entire TED Talk on this, okay? But now, here we have our most blunt, easy to understand, yet most deep down explanation that we can think of. And as you will see in later videos, you'll see that species also need to be split in two. But for now, subspecies is done. And species is another story.